Today on Sega Talk, we look at 17 never-released Sonic games and we'll rank them in terms of importance. Find out what could have been in this What If episode of Sega Talk.
Sega Bits presents Sega Talk, a podcast talking all things Sega! With your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. Say what?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sega Talk number 123. 123. I'm your host, George, and like always, with me is Barry.
Hello, I'm an artificial intelligence.
All right, write me a poem about unreleased Sonic games, please. Chat Barry PDT.
There once was a game starring Sonic. Unfortunately, it did not release. However, years later, it leaked online, and now they made it a cartoon by Tyson Heese.
Okay, that's as close. I think we're doomed now. I think AI is going to take over. As you could tell, if I wanted Chat GDP to write me a poem, it would a half-ass poem, but it will do it.
Yeah.
So this episode was not well. I put 4 episode ideas on our Patreon, which you should check us out on patreon.com/SegaBits. I let our backers vote for one, and the one that won was unreleased Sonic games. I personally thought we were going to be talking about Sonic toys, and my idea for that episode was basically the first Sonic toy, important Sonic toys, and then maybe you talking about your collection, because you do have a pretty substantial collection of Sonic toys.
I do.
So, no, that didn't happen. But
no,
unreleased Sonic games, I think, are an interesting thing to talk about.
For sure.
But I think it would have been easier because I did some of the notes on the toys because it was winning at first, and then I checked back and I was like, okay, I'll erase all of this. Not a big deal. So, what is your history with, like, when's the first time you ever found out about a Sonic game that you thought was going to come out or you knew about and it never released?
I think the most popular one's Sonic X-treme because they promoted that quite heavily. I remember them talking about it in the Sonic comic books. They would, say, coming out, later this year, Sonic X-treme for the Sega Saturn. I didn't own a Saturn, but I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know if this is a real memory or not, but I could have sworn I saw Sonic X-treme signage at a video game store.
I would believe it.
But maybe I did. It just, that logo looked familiar to me and I remember seeing it. I mean, I could have been seeing Sonic Jam or something, but it just, I don't know. But yeah, that Sonic X-treme for sure. At least just the name, because I just don't remember at the time seeing any visuals or videos or screenshots, really. I just remember hearing about it. So that's the big one.
I have to agree with you. I think Sonic X-treme, and I think it's probably the one of the most important games. So we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty because Sonic X-treme could do a 2-hour episode in its own. There's literally 5 potential storylines. There's 4 other games we're talking about here just briefly that tie into the creation of Sonic X-treme. So Sonic X-treme was a huge project. So yeah, that would be my first one too. The only other one after that was that one skateboarding game, which is on this list too. The skateboarding one that was found on. Well, that one we didn't even know about, but that's another canceled one more recently that we found out about. And how many canceled Sonic games, canceled Sonic pitches do you think are out there that we'll never find out about?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, we're talking about 17 ones today. I'm certain there's probably 100 plus, especially pitches. I'm certain tons of people came to Sega.
Right.
So, I mean, when we did our Sonic Boom episode, that one alone was a different game before it started. So that's technically one right there. You know, the
right.
early version of Sonic Boom. What was it? Sonic. Well, you can watch that one if you're listening.
Right. So, let's start the episode off with the first canceled game. This is a Master System game. It is really early on. It's a educational Sonic game that was supposed to come out on the Master System. It was supposed to be made by Tiertex, and it was supposed to be using US Gold as a publisher. Apparently, we didn't really know much about this game for like a long time. People thought it was fake because it actually uses the Sonic sprite from the Genesis on Master System software. So people didn't believe it was real. They thought it was just a copy and paste job. But
right.
In March 2007, first we found out about it because there was a Wikipedia page made in September 2006 randomly. So people still thought it was fake. It was deleted. And then in March 2007, a person called The Programmer replied to an SMS power topic on their forums saying that he was the one that was developing this game back in 1991. And so he dropped a few interesting facts about this game in that forum thread. So one of them, he said that he thought so they were making this game as a pitch to Sega. So they were developing, I don't know why they would do this. You know, you think they would go up to Sega first and be like, we want to make an educational Sonic game. But apparently they were literally working on it, but with assets from old Sonic games, the Genesis ones. And they were, apparently a few people at Sega knew they were developing this in secret. And they think that's why they made a whole educational machine, which I think we did. Did we do a Sega talk on the Sega Pico?
Not yet. It's in the pipeline.
Okay. So he thinks that's they got that idea from their game. This would be the third Sonic title in development, Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 being the two Sonic title in development at the time. The target audience was kindergarten kids, very low educated, obviously. I mean, it's not supposed to be hard. So you can't really move. It's really just mini games. The game was actually tested in a primary school in Manchester and was well received. The game was officially allowed by Sega but never approved, so I don't know if this is an unlicensed game or not. He talks about the game. He talks about how people thought it was fake because if you see the sprite here, actually I think if you look at the video, it looks pretty good for a Master System game. The idea this is running on a Master System, like, it's pretty impressive because I don't think any of the Master System games look like this. So that's actually kind of shocking to me about this.
Yeah, the sprite alone just looks like the Sonic Genesis sprite, even the way it moves. It's really impressive, actually.
Yeah. So, and there's a ROM for this game, actually. It got released by the programmer himself to show that he was actually programming this game. And so you could play it if you really wanted to. It's incomplete, obviously. Where would you rank this game on our ranking list? Like, you think
so?
How are we
ranking?
We're ranking it as in terms of how important it would have been. Like, if this game released, do you think it would have made a big dent in the Sonic sphere, or would it just be like F? This wouldn't make a big difference.
So it's A. Is it S? Is there an S tier?
It's S, A, B, C, D, and F.
I would put it at D. I don't think it would be that important.
I think some kids would grow up with it and love it and stuff as an educational game, but I agree with you. It's like the Pico isn't ever going to be thought about as big as the Sega Genesis or the Saturn or the Game Gear.
That's why, right? That's why the fact that there's released educational games that no one talks about or cares about, like I haven't posted the video yet, but I plan to make it for the Dig. I picked up the console and I have the game, and it's just like this. It uses Genesis sprites, and I was showing it online, and people are like, "Oh my god, I've never seen this before," but it existed. No one cared about it. Same with the Pico game. So yeah, I would say D. if it did exist, I think a lot of people now would be picking it up as like, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I don't see it being that important.
So the next game we're talking about is a Sega Sonic Brothers, which is kind of a weird game name, really, because it really reminds me, like, if I was a kid and I heard this, I'd be like, is this a Sonic team up with Mario? That's what I would think, just because of the name. This game was actually developed in 1992 for the Sega System C2 hardware, so it wasn't even a console game. It was supposed to be an arcade game. And it's considered finished. It had localization testing in Japan, but people weren't into it. It didn't make the money when they tested it. People weren't playing it. The game's actually designed by Fukio Matsuji of Bubble Bobble fame, which is a great game. This game, I don't know if you're looking at the gameplay, Barry, but like something about the way that the squares fall seems really, really cheap. Like the game just kind of looks cheap. So what do you think about the idea of like localizing this game? Like in Japan, do you think since Sonic isn't big in Japan that it might have like been more popular here in America?
It's possible. I just know from experience with like stuff the Galloping Ghost Arcade releases, there are a lot of like little known Sega puzzle games, and this one would have just been like one of many. I mean, there aren't dozens, but there are more than you would think. Like you see one and you're like, oh, this isn't columns. This isn't this is, you're like, what the hell is this? It's kind of like columns, and that's kind of where this falls in. It's like columns, but in fours and with three different colors.
So you're you're basically right about that. That's what it is. I think you get the Chaos Emerald that takes away all the puzzle pieces from, wherever it lands up. It also featured music from Sonic 1, I think. So every 10 levels, it changed this track. It also has the Sonic clones, and so it has a yellow and red Sonic, and at level 30, you get a white Sonic. So what's your thoughts about that? Like the idea of just recoloring Sonic, because they really reused these colors for main characters after this.
Yeah, it seems kind of wild that this came so early, and when they really didn't have a stable of characters to draw from. I think in the future, like 97, 98, this game would have been a lot better because we would have had all the Sonic the Fighters characters, Knuckles, Tails, Amy. Like, you could have multiple colors. You have a rainbow of Sonic characters, and it actually would work really well because they all have very identifiable colors. But here it's just like, it's Sonic Underground, basically. Right. But yellow Sonic is Super Sonic now, and red is Knuckles. So it's a weird concept. I don't know where Sonic Team was at in terms of like their lore at this time, but I gotta imagine they were like, what are these recolors? Let's not do this.
Yeah, and another game that I guess people would be reminded of for this would be the puzzle game Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Obviously,
which is
way better. I was going to say, I don't know what you're going to say.
Yeah, and it's Puyo Puyo, which is a better game.
Exactly, so...
Yeah.
The game, actually, L. Nilsson, a lot of people think he actually said this game was unsatisfactory when he was talking about, I guess in an interview for Sega Sonic the Hedgehog in 1993, he said there was another game, and people were saying they think it's this one because it's also called Sega Sonic, that it just wasn't good enough, according to him. The game was later discovered in 2016 on a working PCB board, and by an arcade collector called Showtime. He would dump it sort of in a way, not really releasing it to the public because according to him, he was afraid that the price of the board would fall because now it's out there and anybody could download it. So he did this whole thing where he went to like shows for 2 years in like 2000, I think, let me see, I put it in here, 17 and 18, to let people play it at event cons. Later, somebody found it themselves and dumped it.
Good.
And so now you could play it whenever you want. You don't need this guy's permission. But what's your opinion on these people that find these like rare arcade boards and they're like, okay, I'm not going to dump it because it's going to destroy my prize because it's kind of like...
I hate it so much.
I hate it too, but then I was thinking, like, can you imagine if you did one action that would destroy your house value by 50%? Would you take it? I'm like, I don't know. To preserve something, I don't know. It's weird. This is weird dynamic where you're like, you have something that's worth something.
Right.
So I don't know. I've never had one of these, but
I would secretly rip it and have a backup, sell it, and then after the whole transaction processes, wait a year and then release it. So I made my money and I devalued it for them. But yeah, I mean, I've never dealt with it with games, but I've had people come to me and they're like, hey, I have this rare thing. And they'll send me a picture, and I'm like, it's usually like a movie script, like an old Sonic movie script or something. There was a few of them going around. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Can you scan it? And they're like, I just want to know how much it's worth. And I can tell right then and there, they're like, they don't want to share it because they feel it will devalue it, which I don't get. Because if you have the original arcade board, the only one in existence, that's worth a lot. If you have the only physical script, the original script in existence, that's worth a lot. If you scan it, it doesn't devalue it at all. It just puts the information out there. It makes no sense to me. It's such a weird way of thinking. Like no one has the ability to play this. Like what are you doing?
It's like Tomba. They just got re-announced that they're going to be re-releasing it on all platforms. The PlayStation copy's rare. The PlayStation 1 copy is still the PlayStation 1 copy. There's only X amount of those PlayStation 1 copies. I don't think it matters that you can... Like, how many people, like, new audiences that buy PS4 are going to want to buy this random game from 30 years ago? Right. I think it might even make it more valuable because it's more... it's in the public eye now, again.
Well, yeah, and we had just recently the Sonic Saturday morning cartoon... They're re-releasing it on a budget DVD, and now the old one, which sells for like $75, might go down in price. But the old one has like better bit rate, and it has bonus features, and it has beautiful artwork by Ken Penders. So it's like, you know, there's something unique about that release. And honestly, when you bought that, was your intention to have it go up in value? No, you just wanted to have Sonic on. So when it comes to retail copies like that, like video games and DVDs and comics, like the intent was not to make something that's a limited, run. Like just because they reprinted Superman #1 does not mean that your copy of Superman #1 is any less valuable. It's so strange.
I agree. And what do you think about the idea of like this guy taking it to cons to let people play it? It almost feels like he wanted to be like he got addicted to this like celebrity. Like he was kind of a celebrity. Because I remember people were like, I think it was Sonic Revolution or one of these events they did that he was going to be there, and a lot of people in the I think Sonic Retro, maybe not the forums, but the Discord or something. We're talking about who's gonna go, and they bought tickets literally just to be able to play this game because they wouldn't be able to play it before that. So
yeah, I don't like that.
That is, I can see people getting addicted to that kind of little being popular in the fandom thing. MAME actually added official support for the ROM in 2001 with version 2.0.236. So you could officially play it before you had to have like a modified ROM to play it on there. So it's cool that it got official support. The next game we're talking about is, there's no footage for this game, but it was, so I'm going to play Pop Full Mail in the background, the footage of the game. So basically, Sister Sonic was supposed to be what Dr. Robotnik was, Mean Bean Machine was for Puyo Puyo, but for Pop Full Mail, supposed to take the game's assets and make them Sonic based, but the name says it's Sister Sonic. But according to the recent Did You Know Gaming, they said that it was supposed to be a hedgehog character in Sonic's family, not his sister, but someone in his family that was supposed to be a bounty hunter, and so it was supposed to be this game, but Sonic themed. They later basically said no, and they actually went back and localized Pop Full Mail fully and released it on the Mega CD or Sega CD, wherever you're from. Sega CD. So what's your idea of these like games that try to take like this anime game and just be like slap Sonic on it and then release it? Would that have been? Oh, before we get to this one a little bit, we have to rank the other one, the puzzle
right, of
game.
course.
So where you rank Sega Sonic Bros? The name alone,
D.
I think D.
D
With
as
the
well.
I
just think it would have.
Game?
It would, if it did release, it would have been just like alongside Sonic Eraser, where it's just kind of like a fiddly little, puzzle game that people are like, well, it's not canon. They didn't know what they were doing. They just made a red and a yellow one, and like jokes would be made about it, and like comics, like they'd say, "Hey, Sonic, who's your yellow brother?" And he goes, "That's not my brother. That's me when I'm super." Like
right. So 2D
it would have been
so
a stupid
far.
footnote. Yeah,
2D so far. All right. Now we can get back to...
Let's get to Sister Sonic. So for me, like looking at Sister Sonic, this would have been like the Super Mario Brothers 2 of Sonic games, because it would have been a complete reworking of a honestly very good game, just as Super Mario Brothers 2 is a reworking of a very good game. I've played a ROM of Pop Full Mail, and I absolutely loved it. I didn't play too much of it, but what I did play, I was like, this is really fun. It's kind of got a Monster World vibe to it, where it's like RPG-esque, but platformer, which I really dig. And if it was like an expansion of Sonic's lore with like a member of his family, and it was like a kind of like, I guess the equivalent of like Amy Rose and Sonic Boom, right? Where she's a little more like on her own and a little more tough. That would have been really sweet. I would have loved this game, and I think a lot of fans would have. Can I give this a letter score?
Yeah, well, first, I have to agree with you on there. I think this game would have probably actually done really well. I just wish it wasn't so, what do they say, so stuck in trying to be a female character, because I feel like they could have just made it Sonic, really. If you're going to rework the game, just make the character Sonic. I wish it was Amy, but there was no Amy 92. So you have a limited amount of characters to work with. Obviously, they would have to make up characters for this. Maybe use the Archie comics. I don't know how far they were in 92 in story-wise and character-wise. But, yes, we could now rank it. Where would you rank Sister Sonic?
I'm going to say A. Because I'm thinking if they went all out, it had like Sonic's name in the title, and it was considered a Sonic game, even if it was like, reworking. I think a lot of fans would look to this one and go, "Oh man,
Where did
Sonic,
you put it at again?
Sonic CD, Sister Sonic." What's that?
Where do you put it at again?
A.
What letter? A? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this game would have been, I think, pretty big, especially with the idea that it had a story to it. It would have driven it. It would have been like Sonic 2. I think there's a big cult Mario fan base that loves Mario 2 and want another type of game like that they're never going to get, probably.
Right, and I think the same would be for Sister Sonic. I don't know if they would call it Sister Sonic, but
it's a terrible name.
Right, but I could just imagine fans back then being like, "Oh man, you got to get Sega CD. They got Sister Sonic, they got Sonic CD. Like that alone, 2 Sonic games.
Yeah,
would have been big."
And I think Sonic CD was the most popular Sega CD game, so definitely would have been big. So this next game we're talking about is Sonic 16. Sonic 16 was a Sonic the Hedgehog game concept pitched by Peter Marwick and John Duggan of Sega Technical Institute, based on the upcoming Sonic the Hedgehog television series. The pitch was put together shortly after the completion of Sonic Spinball, which I think holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts, since it's the only TV adaptation into a video game. only a single screenshot and demonstration video were showing are known to exist of Sonic 16. The later dated November 2, so they basically pitched in November 93. It was made by the Omega Software Brilliance. The video took a week to complete and reportedly was vetoed by Yuji Naka, of course. So they moved on to make Comic Zone instead of this. So let's look at the 1 minute footage of the game real quick, and you can tell me what you think about this pitch video. And this was published by Sega 16, so good on them for picking this up. Has a little countdown, of course, get you excited and hyped. So yeah, this is the show. Is that the logo?
Saturday morning one, yeah. Boy, they got a lot of words before they actually get to the game.
They got to hype the investors up, like, check this out. They don't really show any of this, I think, but it is more state-of-the-art for sure. I don't know if this game could actually run on the Mega Drive, but you tell me when they shows it. Has like hiding and stealth and ring powers.
It's like Metal Gear Sonic. I think a lot of fans called it when it was leaked.
And you can see the influences on the environments from Comic Zone too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not surprising a lot of people from Sega Institute went to work at Sony and made games that kind of have similar gameplay mechanics.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Have you ever seen footage of the what's that game called? It's the NES port of that Don Bluth animated Dragon. What is that called? I'm blanking. Here, I'll look it up. Dragon Slayer. If you ever saw the NES version of Dragon Slayer, it kind of reminds me of that. Where it's not so much a platformer as it is like a character slowly moving through different obstacles, and then you have to figure out how to get around them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it seems like when you're in one place, you're stuck there until you figure out, okay, well, I need to duck, or I need to spin dash here, or I need to jump here. So it is much more of like a puzzler, and then you reach parts of the stage, and it's like a quick fight.
Right.
It's interesting. Of course, this is just a proof of concept.
Right.
So
I think the animation looks better than what Sega Genesis games look like, but then when they say here that it was created using software to make animations, it was never running on the actual hardware. So to me, I could see why Yuji Naka would veto it, because you have a game that's built around speed and the physics, and all of a sudden you're making a game that's super slow. It's not a different genre. If people just saw it, they would say, oh, this is another Sonic game, and assume they're going to be buying a Sonic game that plays like a Sonic game. So what's your thoughts on that?
It's a lot like Sonic Spinball, which did release, because remember, when you play Sonic Spinball, you don't start off running, you just kind of walk into the pinball machine. Right. And any of the moving about, running about, is very slow and highly animated. So I think had this released, it would have been obviously would have been one of the slower Sonic games. I think it definitely would have had a fan base behind it, though, especially considering the talent behind it and the fact that it's based on the Saturday morning cartoon show. I think a lot of fans probably would love this game for years. I think some might even point to it as their favorite game because they love the cartoons and they love the comics.
I agree with that. It has Sally in it.
So with that in mind, like, where would you rank this one, just with that in mind?
Since it's just a proof of concept, I like the proof of concept. I think it has some cool ideas. Like, I think as a kid I would go crazy that you could actually use rings to attack. I would put it as a B, just because I thought the cartoon was really well done. I kind of don't like the fact that you're not moving fast. I think it's something that you need for Sonic. Even in the cartoon, it was part of the cartoon. So I would put it as a B unless they like fix and make them actually run around in these stages. But I think it's a cool concept. Where were you put? You think B would be good enough?
I think B's fair. I think it would have had maybe not a cult following. I guess a cult following. I feel like there's a lot of people who like Sonic Spinball too. So I think it would kind of fall within there, where it appeals to the Saturday morning Sonic fans. It probably would have not been a great game, but it would have been a good game starring Sonic. But it wouldn't be a Sonic game, if that makes sense, because there's no, like you said, there's no speed, there's no pinball physics. It's really Sonic in like a kind of like Prince of Persia game, which is kind of odd. But
yeah, Prince of Persia is actually a pretty good way of describing it. The next game we're talking about is a little unreleased title called Treasure Tales. So it's not a Sonic game technically, and it's funny because Sonic Retro like has some other websites saying that they posted it first. I literally remember us going to because Chris Scene, I think that's or Stit, is that what it is? He posted it on some like Facebook group randomly, and I was like, wait, nobody's reporting this. So then I started reporting it because I was like, it's kind of Craig Stitt. There you go. It's kind of ridiculous that he was posting like Astropede and these new games, and nobody was actually talking about it. So he was apparently Sega Technical Institute, which apparently has a gazillion Sonic pitches that they told him no. Was supposed to, in 1993, pitch the idea of Tails having his own solo game, which he actually got 2 on the Game Gear, I think. Well, yeah, 2 on the Game Gear. So it's not outlandish for him to get more, I guess. Here's on the Sega Bits website, we have the mock-up screenshots. I was going to say to watch the video, but the VHS he posted was just the screenshots. So it's just a video of the screenshots. From what I see in here, it's reusing the Sonic 2 sprite of Tails. And they have all these assets that sometimes don't flow together well. As you could tell, like the fire one, these little like pads or whatever are all just like copied and pasted. So very early screenshot. It looked like it would have been a puzzle game, isometric platform puzzle game / adventure. But yeah, what do you think about this? Because I feel like the Tails Game Gear games kind of go under the radar, in my opinion.
Yeah, it definitely would have been an interesting game had it actually even been developed. I mean, it's just artwork, pixel art. Yeah. I will say too, yeah.
How you don't even know how it would play. Like some of the stuff doesn't even make any sense. Like he's hitting a button here, but it's all like fire, and the button's supposed to like light the water. It looks like these little bumping things they have right here that they paste everywhere. You would be able to bounce from them.
Right, yeah, and it's interesting too. You bring up like when the news broke. Yeah, I see here on Sonic Retro they cite retrofaith.net posting it a day after we posted it.
Right, ridiculous.
Yeah, I have opinions on retrofaith.net. But anyway, if you also go to segabits.com on March 19th, 2022, George, did you see that I posted even more information about it that no one's posted anywhere else?
Let me see.
Did you know that?
I should have, right? I just literally Googled, let me see. Oh, is that the Robotnik's Pinball Fortress art?
Right, yes. Right. So I'm on a Sonic, hidden Sonic group, and people will sometimes be like, how much is this worth? And it's like, oh, I just want these screenshots. So this is interesting because it's actually a printout from like a binder, and it includes a picture from Treasure Tales, but there's some text on it. So it says, an ancient pattern is the key to Tails' survival. Tails must retrace this pattern to please the gods. Oh. So it sounds like it's a grid-based puzzle game, and I guess the best best comparison is actually in Sonic Frontiers when you have those puzzles, remember? Mm-hmm. And it shows you it, and then you need to go over the grid the correct way to, like, knock out every, like, retrace. Right. It says, but it won't be easy. The floor tiles are old and weak. Tails' first step will crack them. The second plunges him to a fiery death. Think carefully about your next step. It might be your last. And it's interesting, too, because it kind of reminds me of Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade.
Right.
Where he has to spell Jehovah, you know.
Right.
And then he, like, can fall through the floor. I think Sonic Team probably wouldn't like the idea of Tails dying in, like, fire.
He never dies, though. He's immortal,
that's
right?
True. That's true. But anyway, point of the story is we've posted more information about this than Retro Faith.
Oh, well, you don't have to convince me. I know that. Where were you rank? Because to me, one of the things I think Sonic Team's kind of like not done correctly, the way that Mario's done, is give their side characters proper like representation in their own games. Like Knuckles is his massively popular character, but he's never had his own Knuckles video game.
Chaotix. But...
Chaotix, sorry. But he's in a group with people, right? Okay, so that's the closest.
Right.
But I'm saying modernly, even now, like, how many Wario games have Mario made? And how many Luigi games?
It's ridiculous that Shadow was the last character to have their own spin-off, and that was, like, 20 years ago. It's insane. Right. It's stupid. Sega's sitting on free money. The fact that they have not made an Amy Rose game, a Knuckles game, a Tails game, an Eggman game. Eggman lights up social media. He's one of the most popular characters in the franchise. There's a reason why people... like, Jim Carrey steals the show in both Sonic movies. So, yeah, Sega's absolutely stupid. The fact that they're not making games. But in the case of this one, I think if it did happen, they'd have to do a lot to make it be worthy of its own cartridge. And I don't know how you can really make a big action, like, puzzle game with Tails. They would have had to do a lot of work to get this to really be worthy of being made. But if they did, I think it would have been a enjoyable game. But again, like Sonic 16, it lacks the speed. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. I feel like...
Mid? You think it would be a good one? C?
Yeah, C. I like C.
Because I'm thinking the same thing with you. There's no speed. I think the... Tails Adventure, the one where you get like upgrades, is more Metroidvania, had more going for it, more action. So I would think me as a kid back in the day, I'd be like a puzzle game. I didn't sign up for a puzzle game as a fanboy of the Sonic franchise. Like they gave you all this speed, and all of a sudden they're like, actually, now you're going to do a puzzle game. I don't know. I'm okay with like a Tetris type puzzle game like Puyo Puyo, because that's totally different in my opinion than like moving around all slow. Okay, so Untitled STI Sonic game 1994. The image on the right, which I think I have right here, maybe.
I think you skipped Sonic Crackers.
Oh, no, wait, you're right. I did skip Sonic Crackers. My bad. So we have another game called, I don't know if you heard about this game, called Sonic Crackers. I hope I don't get demonetized or I get flagged by YouTube for this one, but it's a...
That's okay.
There's even a prototype for it, so that's good to know. Sonic Crackers, referred to as Sonic Stadium on the ROM header, is a early prototype build that would have become a Sonic 32X video game called Chaotix. It sees the players controlling Sonic the Hedgehog and Tails basically, tied together using others' momentum to navigate through the stages. The full story behind Crackers is not known. However, it is suspected to have been created as a pitch by the company to Sega executives, which later got picked up and turned into Chaotix. While there was an initial speculation about the build or whatever, people think that it was not supposed to be called Sonic Crackers, but Sonic was clackers because the way that it's translated because it's a toy.
Yeah.
The toy's name is clackers.
Clack, 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 clack. Yeah.
Yeah. So, are you surprised that Sega executive? Well, first of all, if you guys are looking at the demo or the raw footage on the video, it looks really, really nice. Like, it looks literally like this could have been a game already. Like, if you told me this is an actual game, I would have been like, oh, yeah, that is an actual game. And there was fields and levels created for this. Are you surprised that Sega executives were like, no, sorry, no Sonic and Tails, but you could have the Chaotix?
Yeah, it kind of surprises me that they wouldn't have said, let's go with a Sonic the Hedgehog 32X game. Again, it's such a strange decision. It's like they finally give Knuckles his own game, and it's on an expansion or a add-on. So yeah, it's a strange choice. I think the game would have been a lot better if it was Sonic and Tails, and then you could also add other characters like Knuckles, Amy, that sort of catalog. I actually really like Chaotix. Gameplay-wise, I think it's weird, it's janky, but that's what makes it so much fun. It's like you take Sonic's pinball physics and add rubber banding to it, and it's just wacky. But I like that. I don't know, like I like a Sonic game that brings me something new, and so I think this would have been cool. I'd especially be curious as to what story they would have done with Sonic and Tails being able to like connect the rings. I think 2-player gameplay with Sonic and Tails would have been cool, but you can do that too with Chaotix. But
I'm gonna assume that it's gonna be that Eggman makes fun of them for being best friends, so he's like, "Why don't you guys just marry each other?" And he ties them up with these like rings. Yeah, and so now they can't be apart. And that would be
it. Yeah,
that would be the story. That would be beautiful.
It's progressive.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, when I was a kid, I always thought that Tails was a girl, so because I'm an idiot, so I guess it might have worked out for me back then. So,
right.
Where would you rank Sonic Clackers? Because I feel like that's
Clackers,
right? Or I was gonna say Sonic Stadium, but then the website would now have an actual game to its name.
Right, exactly. Was this going to release on the 32X, or was
it was
pitched
a 32X.
as a Genesis? Okay.
32X.
I think 32X knocks it down. If this released instead of Sonic Knuckles Chaotix, we would have been basically Chaotix is kind of a lesser game compared to if this happened, but without Chaotix, we would not have had the Chaotix, and we would not have had Vector and, SBO and Charmy and all that fun stuff. So as far as like expanding Sonic's cast and lore and all that, I'm glad we had what happened, but I think a Sonic game would have helped the 32X sell. So yeah, if this came out, I'd probably put it at a C, because I think it still would have been janky. I still think it would have had its detractors.
And I think a lot of the aspects about Chaotix is that it's a Knuckles game, really. I think that's what a lot of people remember it now as. So I wonder that uniqueness of just being another Sonic game would maybe even like tarnish its legacy overall in the long run.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. The next game we're talking about is this untitled STI Sonic game, which is the first picture I have, technically, I think. Let me check on my it's this isometric looking game. It was the image was created by Chris Scene, whom was employee of Sega Technical Institute. No actual gameplay engine was created or actual work done, just made this image. The concept shows that it would be another isometric Sonic game like Sega Sonic the Hedgehog or Sonic 3D Blast or Sega Labyrinth. If the game was were developed, it may have been unlike Sonic 3D and featured less wide open environments due to single column rows, I guess. This mock-up was created before Sonic 3D, so they didn't just copy Sonic 3D, the isometric idea, and was trying to be a 32X developed game, I guess. So all we have is this one image to go by, and I hate isometric Sonic games. I think they don't work that well. I probably wouldn't have liked this game myself. I probably would rank it low, but what do you think about the graphics in this image? We have a shiny Sonic too, making its debut here because I don't think there was. Oh, Sonic 3 had shiny Sonic, right? So
yeah, he was shiny. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really feeling this game. I think it would have been just like 3D Blast, where it's just... It seems like it's actually like 3D Blast with even less movement. Like it's almost like 3D Sonic Pac-Man, which there are isometric Pac-Man games, and they're fine. But that's kind of what this looks like. So in that regard, I think that had this game gone through development, it would have its fans just like 3D Blast does, but I don't think it would have, been like the true 3D Sonic game that we were all hoping for. And if anything, it might actually be a step down from what 3D Blast was. So I'll let you pick the letter grade for this, but I'm not really feeling it.
It's kind of hard for me to say it's going to be worse than the educational Sonic game, but I'm like almost wanting to do that. So I'll just say D, just to be nice, because I think Sega Technical Institute had some pretty good games, and I don't want to be putting them lower than a U.S. Gold game. So,
right.
The next game we're going to be talking about, a little game called Sonic Mars that was pitched in 1994. This game, I guess there's not too much known about it outside of this image that you could see on the Sega Retro page. Sonic Mars was a conceptual Sonic the Hedgehog originally designed for the Sega 32X. Again, so many Sonic games were pitched for the 32X. Likely, due to the system's limitation and commercial failure, the project was moved to the Sega Saturn, where it later evolved to be Sonic X-treme. The proposal was put together in 94, so basically, I'm trying to see if there's anything good here that we don't know. Well, let's look at, there's these like, I didn't put them into the video, but let me see if I could put them in right now. There's these GIFs that came out that were basically, they're called Sonic demos. Basically, Chris Sin posted them. So basically, this is what the game would have looked like. I don't know if you can see them over there.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think I'm looking at the right thing.
Right. They're like these weird 3D... Trying to get them to play better on the video, but... So it would have been it looks like a really early 32X game, right? So Sonic running around,
it's
jumping.
like if a Sonic game was made in Virtua Racing.
Exactly. There you go. That's actually the best description for this. It's virtual racing Sonic game, literally.
And I love the aesthetics. I think it's super cool. I would have been all over this game.
I do too. And this is supposed to be a 32X game. Would have had done well on the 32X. It's kind of hard to tell. I like the space one. I think it's cool. I would have to see more. I think this is probably this would have been technically the first 3D Sonic game, because if you look at it, one thing that does look annoying is that you're going to fall off the edges. There's no like edge. So the person playing it is being very careful. You can see when they go by edges and playing it perfectly. Right. So that would need a lot of work. I still think this was really early, obviously, because how well will you be able to play this as a kid? Like, I would be falling off the edges every 5 seconds. But I love the aesthetics.
Yeah, it's funny because when you look at the classic Sonic Genesis games, technically he's always on an edge, but you have no way of walking forward or backward to fall off. So in this sense, it's very much like Sonic 2D transitioned into 3D, but yeah, that additional hazard is a problem. I think the game would have played a lot better, kind of like if it were like Bug, where it shifted angles like it's doing here, but there was no fear of falling off the edges. But from what I'm seeing, like I personally, if this was a real game, I would have loved it. It would have had its issues, but just watching it, like, I want to play this.
I actually do too.
I don't know.
I wish there was like a demo we could play. Like this is one of the first ones I was like, oh, so this is what you guys had in mind. This actually looks pretty good, like in my opinion. Like I like the low polygon aesthetics. I don't know how it would have translated to a game, like I said about the, but I think it would have been. Imagine this thing coming out on the 32X. Like that, I think would have sold 32Xs.
It looks like Sonic the Hedgehog Monkey Ball, doesn't it?
Kind of, yeah. If they got it all working correctly.
Yeah.
So where will you rank Sonic Mars?
I'm gonna be crazy. I'm gonna say A.
Wow, that is pretty.
I think
people
would point to it. They'd say it's the first 3D Sonic platforming game. It was, a big deal when it released. It would have predated Mario 64.
Yes, because it was pitched in '94, I think. So it would. I think Mario 64 came out in '96, '95, maybe late '95.
Yeah. So people would be pointing to this. Sonic Adventure would have been, kind of like, oh, it's just another big 3D Sonic game. But yeah, I think a lot of like dorks like us would have like been all over this game and putting it up there with Virtua Racing and like Virtua Fighter 1, where it's just like, yeah, it's a little janky, but don't you love the aesthetics? And it was fun.
So the next one is kind of debatable. I didn't want to maybe not put it here, but I think it's a discussion to have. It's called Sonic Ride in 1994. Sonic Ride was a roughly 1 minute clip in 30 seconds created by Sega AM3 in 1994. It features both first and third person views of Sonic the Hedgehog and his world with pre-rendered 3D visuals. I guess the game was supposed to be sort of like a Sega motion simulator ride, like an attraction ride for arcades, the idea behind it. It has the music video for the promotional signal They Call Me Sonic, which is popular with some people, I guess, on the internet.
Yeah, I like that song.
The game was supposed to be... this was actually included in Sonic Jam on the Sega Saturn. So, first of all, I love Sonic Jam. Do you think that we should just get... Like, next time they do a collection like Sonic Origins Plus, they should just put, like, pitched Sonic games that never made it in the collection and just show it to fans?
I think that would be cool. Yeah, I think Sonic Origins Plus was lacking in like porting over a lot of this stuff. I think that would have been cool. And giving it more context, because I think Sonic Jam just kind of drops stuff in your lap and you're like, what is this? Yeah.
Okay, so people are saying that they think this is just kind of like a pitch by Sega AM3, but not really for a serious video game or movie pitch, but just the idea, a proof of concept that you could make Sonic's world in 3D. I guess in a way, the early way of pitching a movie. Like the idea that, oh, you could make a Sonic movie. Look, we could do this. And then they show you, this is what it would look like. So let's look at the 1 minute and 32 second clip real quick. And I wouldn't even know how to rank this, to be honest, because it's not even a game. Would this work as a movie? It's hard to tell.
I think if they did make it, it would be one of those situations where you like sit in a little booth with a screen that kind of wraps around you. I don't think it would have been 3D. I don't think there would have been goggles. It would have just been kind of like an immersive experience.
Like an immersive ride, like Sonic Snap or Pokemon Snap or what's that game called? The Jurassic World one? I mean, you shoot, but you don't move.
Yeah. But I think this would have just been like a sit-down experience, and I think it probably would have been a minute and a half. I don't think there would be much more than that. And to be honest, like, you could tell people this actually did release in select arcades, but the machines no longer exist. They'd believe you, and I think it would have had just as big an impact as it does right now, having been unreleased. Like, if this did happen, I can't see there being that many machines, and I don't think any of them would really be around today. So, in that regard, it's just, I don't want to give it a low rating because I dislike it or anything, but just because I don't think it would have really affected people. Because not many people would actually experience it.
So it
which
would
is
be
why
like,
I'm like almost...
It would be like that popcorn machine that people still
Which
talk
did
about.
Exist.
Right, did exist, and it just gave you popcorn. But this one, I would say this is the first time you saw Sonic's World in 3D, so it would have had that going for it. But would it have mattered back then? When this is '94, like Sonic Adventure would have been the real first time that it mattered seeing Sonic's World in 3D. At least the classic vibe, not the Sonic Adventure 2 where they kind of changed it. But so it's kind of hard to put this somewhere, a 3D Sonic kind of movie thing. Where would you rank it? C, just because it's hard to put anywhere. It's not bad. It is the classic Sonic world.
I guess a C. It kind of is what it is. But like I said, like if it had released, it would have been just as, it is right now. It would just be a video clip. People would be like, "Oh, there was a Sonic ride." Yeah, there's a YouTube video.
I could see people like Sonic collectors bragging about owning the Sonic ride, and then having people, "Oh, come over, you could ride 1.5 minutes in this big old machine." That, like, because I would assume that it would be a sit down arcade machine, and be kind of like a carnival ride in a way, but video game version of it. But yeah, the next game we're talking about is this game is not really that well known. It's basically called. So it was supposed to be called Sonic Sports in 1995. Here's a little article that I posted as a screenshot. Basically, the game would be in development for Sega 32X in 1995, and it was kind of talked about a little bit in Game Players magazine. And it was supposed to be similar to Acme All-Stars, but using Sega characters instead. Characters would have included Sonic, Tails, and Ristar, which is surprising, to be honest with you. Game was hinted to have basketball, volleyball, and soccer included. And since I did put the Acme game, I am going to be playing a couple of... actually, no, I didn't put it on our video thing, but I'll put it on now. But I don't know, did you ever play the Acme... First of all, that's a terrible name. It should have been called Tiny Toons All-Stars. But did you ever play this Acme All-Stars game?
Briefly. I thought it was fine. I preferred the other Tiny Toons game a lot more, which
Me too.
Almost feels like this lifts sprites from. But yeah, I feel like a Sonic version of this would have been fine, but... To be honest, like, we have a ton of Sonic sports games with the Olympics titles, and people don't really care about those. Like, they sell well, but they're not... They're kind of like the Avatar of Sonic fandom, where it's like, they do really well, they keep making them, but no one talks about them.
Right. Yeah, like... you know what? That's actually a good point to have, the Olympic Games. Like, when the first game came out, everyone was like, I can't believe this is happening, this is ridiculous. And then after each one, it's like less and less people talk about them. Back in the day, in '95, for the 32X, probably even less people would talk about it because it's a 32X. I was a big fan growing up of Tiny Toons, though. I wish it just kind of went by the wayside. I thought it was a pretty cool reboot or retake on some of the characters, but. I actually don't really care about this All-Stars game. I like the other Tiny Toons game, like you said. But, I don't know. To me, it just doesn't... I don't know. I don't really have too much of an opinion on the idea. I think there should be more Sonic sports games, because I think that's another thing that Nintendo's done better. Like, when they make a tennis game, for some reason, everyone starts talking about it, even because of the gameplay, right?
Right.
I don't know if this game would have been that good. Like, you have to be Mario Kart good, or what's the other one they did for them? They did a soccer game not that long ago. I guess even the Mario sports games aren't really talked about, because they did a soccer game not that long ago, and I feel like the last golf game by Camelot wasn't talked about either that much. So I don't know.
Right.
What do you think? Where would you rank this Sonic sports game?
And just to remind people, this ranking is in terms of, like, if it had released, how important of a game would it have been?
Right. Because we can't play
in that
this
regard. D. Like, I just don't... I think it would have been... I don't know. The fact that Sonic fans have received sports games with the Olympics titles, and they just kind of exist.
Also, it would also depend on the type of Sega characters that would come out. Ristar is probably the most interesting aspect of this game. But the problem is, would it just be Sonic Team games or Sonic type looking games? Like, would we have like Streets of Rage characters in it, or
right? Because Sonic Team didn't really have a stable of characters at that time. So what? It would have been Sonic and Ristar,
right?
Or Ristar.
Ristar, yeah. I guess so. The next game we're talking about is Sonic Saturn, 1996. Alongside the production of Sonic X-treme, STI was working on another, why not, right? Sonic game, only known as Sonic Saturn. Rather than using sprites for Sonic, though, it was going to use 3D models for Sonic. The game was meant to be more realistic rendition of Sonic's world than X-treme. It was never actually announced publicly, and it was in production, but didn't get very far before being canceled. Here's some of the art for it. Concept art. So as you could tell, here's it kind of reminds me of Sonic Adventure in a way, but like with more clouds, and it's kind of this like, isn't it kind of like this? If I told you this is an early Sonic Adventure level, would you be like, oh, okay, I could see it?
I would believe you, but then when you get to the Cybernick art, it looks like Sonic Boom.
Right. There
Rise
you go.
of Lyric.
Right. The art, right?
Which is such like an American like design, you know.
Right.
It's just
I don't know why you have to take the classic robot design. It also has a Sonic's laughing art. Is that original to this, or is that just lifted from another Sonic art?
That's just clip art so that they can show the scale.
Yeah, okay. One thing that I think was interesting about this game was that it was supposed to feature a pool game. It included as a bonus level in the Sega Saturn, but it was included as a bonus round in the Saturn version of Sonic 3D. You can see the pool game screenshots here, so it's like bonus game. And Sonic's getting ready to hustle some people on pool. And then it shows you basically the mini game, which I think has been a staple of Sonic games. After this, like in Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, and some of the later ones having these like bonus games that are basically multiplayer. So it looks cool. I think that it's nice that they have 3D graphics here. They show you a couple, the pyramid, and I don't know what this is, alien level, and a snow level. So seeing this untitled Sega Saturn Sonic project, all we really have to go on here on the ranking is that it has a pool game. We don't really have any gameplay. So where would you rank a Sonic Saturn game that was canceled?
I would probably place this one as an A, just because if it did happen based on the concept art and they put all the time and energy and money into it, that I think it would be a very important game had it happened, and Sonic X-treme did not, because obviously if X-treme was a part of this development, then obviously there would be no Sonic X-treme. There would be whatever this was, but we didn't get it. So I'd place it as an A.
Yeah, I have to agree, because you have to take into account the console it was on, and like people were so thirsty for a Sonic game back then that like this would have sold probably gangbusters, especially being a 3D Sonic game and not being what was that, Sonic 3D Blast? People actually pretend to like that. Can you believe it? So the next game we're going to talk about is a little game called Sonic X-treme. I think a lot of people would consider this the most important canceled Sonic game of all time. It's probably gotten the most press, and it's probably the most famous, especially considering its development history. We're not going to get into all the nitty-gritty about the game, because if we did, that could literally be its own podcast, because there's like multiple stories, history with Yuji Naka interrupting them. There's a lot of drama behind it. So X-treme was a canceled game, but basically... So let's just start with the, you can see the gameplay in the background. It has a fisheye view, and it kind of reminds me of a like X-treme, way bigger project that like Bug kind of in a way. The way the 3D works on here. This is early 3D. This is before Mario 64 was a thing. So we were still trying to experiment with what a Sonic game would be in 3D. And seeing the gameplay here, Barry, what's your opinion on just the way this game looks?
It looks very bizarre. It's unlike anything I've ever seen in a video game before, but if I watch it enough, I get used to it. I can see, you know, how it would play out. It kind of reminds me of the game Bug a little bit, where it's...
Right.
I mean, that game wasn't very revolutionary, but it's definitely bizarre to play. And this, you know... I mean... Sonic 3D Blast was a little odd to play, and then you get used to it. This one, the fisheye lens, it looks like a music video, basically, like a 90s music video.
Right.
So I have to wonder, too, like, if they could turn the fisheye lens off. Like, how did that work graphically? Was this something required of them, or is this something they really pushed in order to make it seem unique and different and less boring? You know what I mean?
They said it's because it was easier to see obstacles and seeing the map, because apparently they had issues with that early on in development. One thing I do think it's weird about the game is how slow they go. Like, there'll be sections where they're just standing still and waiting for stuff to happen. Kind of like typical classic Sonic stuff, where you have to know, kind of experiment in the level and know what's coming up next sometimes, so you won't go... Like, you can't just go super fast in classic Sonic games unless you know what's happening. This kind of reminds me of that when you look at the gameplay. But there's this weird thing where, like, it's not a 3D model, it's a 2D model, because when he, like, turns, it's like there's only two angles. It's like a sideways view and a front view of Sonic. I always thought that was weird in the gameplay. But
that's interesting.
Outside of that, the story is interesting. There's, like, 4 stories out there. We'll read the typical one that a lot of people know about the game. So, basically... the story would be that Sonic the Hedgehog, having received a blue streak distress signal, runs over to the home of Professor Gazebo Boobowski. He's spelled B-O-O-B, so kids would have loved that one. And his daughter Tiara. The two are the guardians of the Rings of Order and also know the ancient art of ring smithing. Dr. Eggman, having learned of the rings, has set about to claim them himself, prompting the professor to ask Sonic to retrieve the magical rings before the evil doctor. When explaining the evolution of the story... but this is more about the storyline. So, what's your... Like, this would have kind of added more... basically, a doctor, kind of a princess character, Tiara. His daughter, I guess, is not really a princess. It would have added the idea of smithing. What do you think about that?
It's an interesting take. I mean, it kind of seems like a bit of excess lore that probably wasn't needed at the time, given we already had the games with their own thing and the Archie comics, and then all of a sudden they're bringing in even more characters. And, you know, just imagine in a few years, like, would any of this actually carry over to Sonic Adventure? I don't think so. Like, I can't imagine Sonic Team being like, oh, let's adapt the Boobowskis. And so, you know... It's fun and different, but either Archie and Sonic Team would really have to adapt to include all this stuff, or it just would have been like a weird moment in Sonic history, just like the OVA was, where we don't really talk about Sarah and her dad anymore.
Right, and it kind of reminds you of that, really, like their take on that story in a way.
Right.
Outside of that, in development for this game, apparently they wanted to add a bunch of characters that were playable, including Amy Rose. But they said, first, let's try to get Sonic done and ready, the gameplay, and then if we have more time, we'll add other characters. So the game was trying to be more ambitious. I could definitely see Knuckles working in this type of gameplay with the wall climbing and stuff, and the way this game looks. Amy would have been interesting because it would be the first time we would play as her in the game, especially in 3D, I guess, because, Sonic Adventure did it, but this is before that. So, the game obviously did not happen, so now we get to rank the game. So, where were you rank Sonic X-treme if it had happened?
If it had happened, it would definitely be an A. This would have been predating...
S, right? Sorry, S is the
F.
highest.
Yeah, no, an A. I mean, this would predate Mario 64. It would predate, obviously, Sonic Adventure. It would really plant Sonic's flag as a 3D platformer much, much earlier than what we actually got. I mean, not that much, like 96 versus 98, but still a couple years is a lot in that era. So, since, game technology was developing so quickly.
I will say that I agree with you. I think it would have been a massive positive for the Sega Saturn that had almost no games, especially Sonic games. I think, especially at this time, Sonic was the most popular it's ever been. So, yes, I would definitely give that a top tier spot. Probably the most popular game, in my opinion, and most important game. The next game we're talking about, we're going to go all the way to 2004, and it's funny because I think a lot of the games we know about are because of Sega Technical Institute leaking everything. The next one we're going to talk about is Sonic DS. We'll talk a little bit about the gameplay. Oh, let's talk about a little bit about it now. But basically, it's a tech demo, really. I would consider it a tech demo. Showing at E3 2004. The game would basically, it kind of looks like a... Temple Run / Pepsi Man type game where you just move the bottom of the screen to make Sonic go faster, and then he reaches Sonic speed, and you have to beat the level. There doesn't seem to be very much control of the character. Let's look at this little 1-minute gameplay video that was posted by IGN. The 3D looks good for an early DS game, but the fact that it doesn't really have much to it, as you could tell, it kind of would have been, I think, critically panned at the time.
Yeah.
This seems more like a little mini game in Sonic Rush that you would do, like a bonus level instead of a full game. So
yeah, it's technically impressive, but there's not much here, and doing this doesn't feel like running. Like, I think they should have done tapping with 2 fingers, like or something. But
right.
It makes me think that if this was a full game, it should have been like Sonic Dash or something. But obviously, that game hadn't been conceived yet.
Right. And it was canceled, and Sonic Team actually started working on a way better game called Field of Magic, which... There is a Sega Talk episode on it, and you guys could check that out. I forgot what episode it was, but we did do a Field of Magic episode. Just Google Sega Talk Field of Magic, and it'll come up on YouTube.
It's episode 69.
Oh, yeah,
Nice.
It was. Sega Talk number 69. I should have memorized that, right?
I think we planned that out. We were like, well, what's going to be a naughty game?
Right,
Yeah.
That is a perfect naughty game. So where will you rank Sonic DS?
Oh, I mean, F, maybe. It just doesn't seem all that interesting.
You know what? That's fair. That's fair because it's literally that would have been terrible. I can already see it, especially in 2004 when Sonic Team was kind of they released Sonic 06 a couple years before that. Shadow wasn't really well received. There was that Sonic Advance port of the first game that was horrible. It's imagine having this game come out in 2005. It would have been another Sonic game that gets critically panned, probably not good. And it's funny because Sonic Rush is critically acclaimed game, I think. It was the only one in that little era. Right.
And just so people understand, it's not like we're judging this specifically as F, but if it was fleshed out to be a full game, would it make an impact? Probably not.
So the next game isn't really a game. I don't personally think so. I just added it here called Sonic the Hedgehog Awakening. Basically, the Pete Capella, the voice actor back then of Silver the Hedgehog, put in his resume that he was voicing Silver in a video game called Sonic the Hedgehog Awakening in 2006. Personally, I think this probably would have been either the original name for Sonic the Hedgehog, the one for 360, or maybe a planned sequel that they had in the works for a bit. It is weird that they already had voices if it was a sequel, meaning they probably... Like, that's one thing that I noticed. None of the canceled Sonic Team games ever make it out in the wild. Like, we never hear about them unless they show them at a press conference. It's really, like, rare to see a Sonic Team game that was canceled. I'm sure they have tons of games that they never made it past a certain stage. But what do you think this is?
Right. I think this one is probably an alternate title for Sonic 06 because... Yeah, it makes sense that at some point in development they were throwing around maybe we shouldn't call this the same name as the franchise and the same name as the first game. It might be too confusing.
Right.
But obviously yeah.
I agree. And we're not going to rank this one because there's literally nothing to rank. I just wanted to bring it up so we could have it in the episode because, I mean, there is literally no info in it. So if some Sonic tuber wants to actually dig more into that would be an interesting documentary video to make. The next game we're going to be talking about is a little game called Sonic Chronicles 2. Details for the plot came out recently in a Did You Know Gaming Lost Sonic Games episode, which is actually pretty well done. They have Mile Holmes, the designer for Sonic Chronicles, talking about the game. And I'm not gonna play the video. You guys can watch it because I don't know if they'll claim the podcast. But according to him, he says the story would have. So in the original, Sonic goes to space, they fight, and then in this one, when they come back, time is different in a way, right? So time's passing slowly while Sonic's coming, but in Earth it's normal time. So when he comes back, so it would be picking up in the cliffhanger. They would come back, and it's now Eggman's world, right? So that's a little of the Back to the Future 2 kind of vibe. We talked about Skynet in Terminator 2, and when you get to see the future, when you get to see where Kyle Reese is from, but now it's all Eggman stuff. So in this case, Eggman, unchecked by Sonic, has been able to do what he's always wanted to do and remake the world in his image. He would then go on and talk about the... I think this kind of reminds me a lot of Sonic Forces and the Resistance and the idea that when you come back, all these old levels, like all these old levels were taken over by Eggman, and they're the same level, like, but different. So according to him, a lot of the population has been rounded up, and they're prisoners and they're slaves or whatever. This thing is funny. It's like slaves or whatever, and you got Eggman's machines in a very dystopic Terminator future. Part of what we would have been fun to go to famous world landmarks and seeing them remade in Eggman style. So going to Paris and seeing Eggman's gear all over the Eiffel Tower, sort of watching down with a big eye or something like that. So those would have been some of the locations. And what do you think about that? Like, Sonic Forces did the whole, like, Green Hill Zone, but now it's... was it a desert? And just little different takes on little things like that. This one would have taken world locations that we know and added Eggman stuff to it. Which one would you prefer?
Well, I mean, I'm not a huge Chronicles fan, and I'm not a huge Forces fan, so I wouldn't prefer either, but... I don't know. I guess more Chronicles might have been kind of fun, especially if it tied up the plot. So we had like a little two-parter, and then we moved on. But there's a lot of things people don't talk about anymore. Like, would it have been exciting? Would we have been if it did happen? Would we have been talking about it as much as we do Chronicles, which is not much?
We never talked about Chronicles. And it's one of those games where I think even the fans back then, like I think Sonic Colors and all these other games got more, even Sonic Rush I think gets more talk about than this game. I don't know how many people actually beat Sonic Chronicles 1, but the bad guy in that game was called Argus, who was a god, collecting and sealing the races of people he thought could kill him, and that's why the echidnas are in here. Supposedly, this is the explanation in the in this game. They're supposed to explain the origins of the echidna race being gone, and Knuckles being the last one. And basically, in the end of this game, it would have been that all these races that were trapped by Argus were actually there to beat him, and that Argus was told by a mage that he was going to get beaten by a race, and so he's been collecting them. But according to him, the designer Mile Holmes, it was basically a manipulation. So we're left with the notion of who's this oracle, this trickster god that got him to do this in the first place? Because obviously he wanted all this to happen. He wanted Argus defeated, and now with him out of the way, the longer question would have been used over the series is, okay, so we've defeated one god, but now there's this other god that made all these things happen. Why did he do that? What is it for?
Right.
And will it eventually threaten us? And if the series was going to continue, then obviously, yes, it's going to be a problem, and we'll get back to it. So, okay, first of all, what's your opinion? Like, Sonic started as just Eggman, the Chaos Emeralds, and now we have gods, and gods that trick other gods into this long-form plan. See, what do you think about this? And are you okay with Sonic Chronicles kind of explaining the echidnas and why the echidnas were gone?
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, echidna lore.
Right,
I don't know.
because I feel like it's one of the most popular things in all the. I think, well, Frontiers even had a little bit of it, right?
Yeah, they actually did. You're right. But yeah, I think we would. If the lawsuit didn't happen the first game, it definitely would have happened the second game if they continued that thread.
Right. Oh yeah, and literally that's why Sonic Chronicles 2 didn't happen. Ken Penders came in and was taking Sega to court. Personally, I don't think even if Sega wins the court case tomorrow, or Ken Penders goes, you know what, I had a change of heart. You guys could go ahead and make Sonic Chronicles 2. I think it's too late. Like, you literally have to have. You basically would have to have people play a game that came out in 2008 and then know the lore about it to play the sequel, which picks up in a cliffhanger. So to me, it's a bit late for this. It had to happen literally after it came out, and I don't think it would have sold 1 million. I think a lot of people bought the first RPG game, and I know a lot of people were disappointed it didn't get the greatest ratings, but where will you rank it, though, on the list of unreleased games?
Maybe like a C. Like, I feel like this right now, Chronicles kind of sits as a C for me. It's not a bad game. It's just it kind of gets kind of old. It's a little forgettable. It canon wise, it's one of the few games that they specifically say is not canon now. So, would the sequel have been any better? Possibly, but I don't know. C.
Let me see. I think that's a pretty good way to put it. I think C sounds good. I mean, it could have been big, it could have not, but I don't think it would have, because I think you would need to play the first game, and how many people actually beat the first game? I don't know.
Yeah, good point.
All right, let me see. So the next game, Sonic X-treme from 2011. Sonic X-treme was an unreleased Sonic the Hedgehog themed hoverboard game for Xbox. A prototype was actually was found on a developer's Xbox unit. This unit also had other non-Sonic related demos that never made it. The information and video, was released by a guy named Proton X on April 20th, 2011. So basically the game would have it's kind of like a Tony Hawk hoverboard game with Sonic the Hedgehog. This demo unit pitched for Sega had Shadow and Sonic playable. Outside of that, it would have had like a combat mode. Let me see. Mission mode, combat, and race is the only thing they talk about. Let's look at the video here we have. It's called, this one's mission number 1. That's what it's called. And as you can tell, it's taking art from other Sonic games. Just kind of, and I'm assuming some of these textures are probably from other Sonic games. Maybe Sonic Heroes, I don't know. Let me fast forward. Okay. And as you can tell, it's literally a hoverboard version of Sonic. Tony Hawk, basically.
Right. I mean, it looks fun.
I think this game would have actually had fans, in my opinion, because Tony Hawk is a very fun game. If they could get more tricks, more Sonic characters, because I think it would have been easy to do Sonic characters, because literally all you have to do is put the model in here, and I think all the animation could be literally the same for everyone, like the grabs, maybe have a couple of special tricks for each one, kind of like Tony Hawk Pro Skater did. And you could literally have the whole cast on this game, and like Amy, Shadow, Silver, Eggman would have been sick to play as. So, in your opinion, if this game got made and fleshed out, where would you rank it?
I would probably rank this as maybe a B. I think it would have been a really beloved game by a lot of people. There aren't that many like drop-in, hangout sort of Sonic games. They're all very like racing-oriented. And to have this one where you could have like, you know, just kind of chill out with a hoverboard for 20 minutes or whatever settings that you put in. Like, I think there would be a lot of multiplayer. I think a lot of people would get a kick out of seeing like Big the Cat on a hoverboard if they went that deep into the cast. So, yeah.
The last game we're going to be talking about is a small. Well, this game is actually interesting because the developer is the one that posted it on their Twitter, not Sega, or not, so it's interesting because it's one of the newer games that gotten leaked from canceled Sonic games. This game is called Sonic Demo, literally, and this was supposed to be done by NitRom for mobile devices. We don't know which mobile devices, but obviously we all know the most popular ones are iOS and Android, so obviously it would have been on those. While unreleased, parts of the game actually made it. Concepts of this game made it to their own game called Super Leap Day. This was posted on their NitRom's Twitter page on December 22nd, 2001. And I really love the art style for this game. I don't know if it would have been amazing or anything, but I think it has potential. Would it have made strides or been a big like game that everyone talks about? It's kind of hard to tell because, well, mobile games kind of come and go in my opinion. There's so many of them. But let's look at the video that they have. So it's only a minute, but as you can tell, it really takes advantage of the, you know, what do they call it? What's this orientation? Portrait mode on the phones?
Oh, yeah, portrait mode.
Yeah. I love the hopping. I love the little, like, it reminds me a lot of, obviously, of Rayman Fiesta, whatever it's called, on the mobile, which is a good game. But this one's more about going up than it is going sideways. You could play it on portrait, which looks good. I like the art style, but some of the art style kind of reminds me of a Mario game, like the bricks and stuff are not very Sonic-ish. But I do like they use classic bad guys. I always like them, so that's cool. But what's your opinion on this?
I think it would have been fun if it released. Who knows how long it would have lasted, just in terms of like games going defunct with delistings and versions not being up to date with new versions of iOS. But I think it would have had its fans. It would have been cool to have like a classic Sonic themed game, vertical jumping game that's not like Sonic Jump.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think, and that's the last game we have to talk about. But now that we've seen about 17 Sonic the Hedgehog games, what would you say your opinion is on all these uncanceled or unreleased games?
Nothing in here really stands out as a huge major loss to the franchise. Edusoft would have been interesting, but it would have been Master System, so would we have cared? Sega Sonic Bros would have been weird. Sister Sonic, I think Sister Sonic and X-treme would probably have been the huge ones. Had they happened, just in terms of helping the hardware that they're released to. And we did talk about that. Which one is it? The one that kind of looked like Virtua Racing.
It was like Untitled.
Mars.
It was like an Untitled one. It was called like Sega something Untitled. Oh, Untitled STI Sonic game.
Yeah, there were a few. The Untitled STI Sonic game, and then Sonic Mars, I think, would have been really cool for retro fans.
Actually,
I don't think they would have aged well, but yeah.
Actually, I looked back on it. It's actually the one you're talking about is Sonic Mars. So Sonic Mars is the one you're thinking.
Okay, yeah. I feel like Sonic Mars would be the one that a lot of classic fans would look back on fondly and be like, yeah, it wasn't perfect, but gosh, it was so cool to play Sonic in 3D, and I love those graphics. But yeah, nothing here. I feel like there weren't major losses. I think they were right to cancel all of these for some reason. It's just kind of wild that X-treme went so far that it did, all the time and effort and money and development, and it just never came to be. Probably because Sonic Team didn't want Sonic on the Saturn for some reason.
So that's it. We're done with the episode. So bye. No, I'm joking. Do you have any memories to read?
Yeah, so if you support us on Patreon at any tier, you can leave your memories. And we actually have a lot of people leaving memories of things they've never played, which is funny. So,
right.
First off, we have Michael S. He says, I've only heard of one of these, but I'm sure most are better than 3D Blast. Not a big 3D Blast fan there. Bobbert says, I remember looking up some info on these games back in the early internet days. I used to go to Sonic forums and look up and discuss these unreleased Sonic games like Sonic 16, Crackers, and X-treme. 16 seems like an okay idea, but shouldn't have Sonic as a playable character due to its slow-paced gameplay. Maybe have Sally Acorn as the lead. That's a good idea. I thought Sonic Crackers was a fake game at first, like how people used to post fake Pokemon game tips, but now I know it is kind of a beta of Chaotix. And X-treme is probably the most well-known one among Sonic fans, and I wish the gameplay and story got revived and became an actual game. They can even use the gameplay of Sonic Lost World as a starting point if they can. Other than these games, I know little to nothing about the other games, so I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about them. Ben Hayward says, like Bobbert, I know very little about these. I'm really looking forward to listening in. The only one I know a little about is the Edusoft title. Thanks for choosing such a great episode idea. And finally, Nicholas Schaefer says, I can't remember what magazine it was, but I remember a second Sonic X-treme game that was about skateboarding. Hey, we did talk about that. And honestly, the boarding part of the Sonic Adventure games would make a great spin-off. Yeah, that's a good point. There are, snowboarding Sonic games, mini games, and the fact that they didn't make a full-blown Sonic snowboarding game, but instead they make a bunch of hoverboard games is kind of weird.
Yeah, weird.
Nicholas continues saying, but the game I know the most about was Sonic Chronicles 2. When Sonic Chronicles was being made, one of the team used to stream and even did a Sonic vs. Metal animated fight on their channel. They talked about how when they asked for the deep stuff in Sonic lore, they got a thumb drive with all the comics and immediately fell in love with the world. Then partway into production, they said they were told the comics were off limits. And then afterwards, when the lawsuit happened, they lost all interest. But before that, they talked about how the second game was really going to kick it in high gear, as Eggman would have conquered the whole planet and Sonic would have had to fight slowly to gain it back. So that's interesting. That information was actually out there, but was on like streams and stuff.
That is
Wild.
You think that, like, I don't know. It's funny because I don't think Sonic Retro even has a Sonic Chronicles 2 page. So it's like you would think they would combine all this information into a Wikipedia source. Maybe I'll make the page. Somebody has to, right?
And cite us.
Right. So that's it for this episode of Sega Talk. Do you have anything planned for next time?
I do, George.
Oh, no.
I considered doing a vote, much like you did, but I think I'm finally gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it a little differently. Snail Maze. But what I want to do is I want to do Snail Maze, Sega Swirl, and other free games from Sega. Stuff that Sega gave away for free, either on demo discs or included hidden on consoles. And there's a fair amount of them, not 17 like we talked about today, but I thought that would be a fun episode to do where we could cover some smaller titles that people know of but don't really think about. So I guess it would be like Sega's Snail Maze, Sega Swirl, and other free games.
We could come up. I mean, the title needs to be. I mean, right.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. I mean,
right.
I'm excited to see because I like Snail Maze, so we'll talk more about Snail Maze and Sister Swirl. No, Sega Sonic Bros. Right. Yeah. It's like
right.
Snail Maze is the future version of that game. But anyway, we'll catch you.
Yeah.
We'll catch you guys next time on Sega Talk. Bye.
Bye. Hey everybody, it's me.
So